Hello everyone and welcome back to the Junkyard. Today is a new beginning and hopefully the start of something beautiful on this channel. I have started up a new hobby and it is Warhammer, if you hadn't already guessed by these guys here, the title and the thumbnail. I spoke to some of you recently during a live stream about the cravings I was getting and how badly I wanted to start collecting Warhammer again. Some of you might know I collected them as a kid, but it was mainly Lord of the Rings and some like little ghoul figures, some little reptilian lizards which I think are still knocking around, and a few other bits and pieces. But you know what it's like, eventually life took over and I got a PS2 and Warhammer sort of took a back step in my life, unfortunately. But I would say the last year or so, like I said before, I've been getting those cravings and the thought of collecting Warhammer again has really excited me. You know those butterflies you get when you think about a new hobby and starting something new? I've been getting that a lot, so I feel like if that's been happening for nearly a year, I think it's time to honour those feelings and give myself a treat and give myself something I want to do again. It's literally been giving me butterflies. I have been so excited to start doing this again. So the process started by going into my local Warhammer store with my girlfriend in Guildford. Now, within seconds of being in there, I was made to feel so welcome and so at home. I honestly cannot speak highly enough on all the lovely people that work there and just all the lovely people who were sat in there painting and just doing their own thing. Straight away I could tell, like, you are my kind of people. I've never felt that welcome anywhere so quickly. It was lovely. I know it is such a slim chance that any of you would be watching this, but if you recognise me and you were in the store that day, thank you so much for making us feel so welcome. One conversation stuck with me in particular, and I was basically saying how I would love to get back into Warhammer, but you know, it's hard to find the time and other things keep coming up and getting in the way. And he just gave me a really solid sound bit of advice, and he was just like, I'm going to be really honest with you. You have to make the time. You have to drop other things. You have to make time in your life to accommodate it. And he was so right. And that's exactly what I've done. I have tried my very best to try and implement this into my lifestyle. After that conversation, I went away for about a week just to do some research. I needed to choose what army it was that I was going to collect. Now, as you guys probably know from watching my videos, I have quite an obsessive personality, so I really wanted to pick one army that I could focus on and just build over time. You know, gradually build a really lovely portfolio of this huge army over the years. That's what excites me the most about collecting Warhammer. And now it was just a case of choosing that army. First of all, I had to choose an age which my army was from. So for those of you who don't know, you have got Warhammer 40,000, which is super futuristic. It's got the likes of the Space Marines inside of it, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Then you've got Age of Sigmar, which is older world. I'm talking swords, bows and arrows, shields, a little bit of magic. I was more drawn to that. I think it's from my Lord of the Rings heritage. In the end, I went with the Orruk Warclans, and I am so sorry if I have just butchered their names. I think I was quite drawn to them because they're not too dissimilar from the orcs from Lord of the Rings, which is obviously just a lovely nod to my childhood. On top of that, I just really like the mixture of troops, bosses, shamans. They've even got troops that ride these like wild boars, which just look insane. So cool. I could also see scope and potential in the way they look and their armour. They wear this yellow plated armour, some of the troops, and I could just see the potential to maybe get a little bit creative and paint them different clan colours and just sort of create my own thing. After making my decision and choosing the army I wanted to collect, I then returned to the store with my partner Eve. I was so excited. We then took part in a beginner's taster session where you have the choice between two figures, one from Age of Sigmar and one from Warhammer 40,000, and you learn how to assemble it, and then you're given a little lesson on how to paint it. And it was an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful we did that because it really helped when it came to painting My first figure's from the Orruk Warclans. So we chose a figure from the Age of Sigmar and we ended up painting his shield. I will put an image up on the screen now. Please do not judge us. This was our first attempt, Eve's first ever attempt in painting a Warhammer figure, and my first attempt in probably over 20 years. It was then time to make my first purchase. How exciting is that? And luckily for me, the army I'm collecting, the Orruk Warclans, have a starter set, which is such a good idea. The boxes include 3 figures, 6 paints and a brush. Just absolutely awesome. I can't quite remember how much it cost, but I think it was within the £20 mark, there or thereabouts. But I remember buying it and just thinking, geez, this is actually really good value for everything you get. Whilst we were there, we bought a few added extras, including a brush for Eve, so she could help me with these figures. And excitingly, Eve is going to start collecting Warhammer 2. She's just in the process of picking what army she's going to collect, which, as you know, is a big decision. We also bought a paint handle, which is this thing. It just makes it much easier to paint the figure. You get a good grip of it and you can rotate it and go round as you go. And we also bought some black spray so we could give our new figures an undercoat. So it was time for us to start our new journey, and as you can see, the figures come in the box like this. So now it was our job to cut them out and assemble them. Now things have changed quite a bit since I was collecting. You no longer need glue, well, not for these figures anyway. These ones just slot together with ease. We then ended up with 3 figures that look like this, and look at the detail on these things. But also, you look at that detail differently when you happen to be called Ezra and have no painting experience. All of a sudden, it looks like a very daunting task. I was just looking at them like, how the bloody am I going to paint you? The next step was to give our figures that undercoat. So we did a very makeshift setup, watched a lot of YouTube videos, and we begun to spray our figures. I believe in the store they said that the undercoat really helps paint to stick when you're putting your base layers on and all the details and everything else. Also, I just think if you do happen to miss anything with things like the orcs, which are sort of a darker, grittier type of figure, having that darker undercoat is way less obvious if you miss anything opposed to like a bright white or just the grey in general. But mainly, I believe it's just so the paint can stick that bit better. Now, we feel like we did quite a good job with the spray. We're not entirely sure. We think we put the right amount on. The entire figure was covered and you could still see all the details. You know, we hadn't sprayed it on so thick that you couldn't see the eyes or the armour anymore. So we feel like for our first time, we did an okay job at this. It was then time to start painting the figure, and I was actually really nervous, and I've got no idea why, because it's my first figure. There is absolutely no pressure for this thing to look good, but at the same time, like, I want it to look good and I want it to be the best that I can possibly make it. Since we both practiced in the store at painting shields, we thought this might be a good place to start on our Orruks. It's a really cool design that resembles a menacing face. Eve did an absolutely amazing job, or at least I think she did anyway, painting the entire face of her figure, whereas I only did the teeth, the mouth, the studs and the spikes. Unfortunately, I think I put way too much red paint on my shield, so actually it ended up being quite difficult to see the details on the shield. I couldn't quite pick out where the eyes and nose were, so I left them red. That's how it looks on the box anyway, so I'm not too disappointed with that, but you can probably tell the difference between my shield and Eve's shield. Hers is a really lovely smooth finish. Mine is really horrible and blotchy. It just doesn't look good at all. We then made the decision to paint the armour and the weapons next, and in hindsight, we're not actually sure this was the best decision to make. The armour is obviously raised and his weapons are out here, so if you paint them first, you then have to go past them with your brush later to get to the skin with the green, and obviously that's quite a challenge. Since painting the figures as well, we did actually watch a video where they put an undercoat colour on of green. This way the skin is already painted and all you have to do is go around and colour in the armour and the weapons. Also, if you're starting with green, it isn't the end of the world if you put brown on the green, because you could just claim, oh, it's a bit of mud. Whereas if you start getting green on its armour, it's like, well, hang on, why is there green on his armour? Is that just a random bit of skin that's flaked off? It doesn't really make sense. Obviously, you can go back and touch things up, but if you were short on time or you were just rushing to get it done, it would make more sense. Once we were happy-ish and we had painted the figures, we then applied a shade, or liquid magic as they called it in the Warhammer store. This stuff is insane. It is such a lovely finishing touch on the figures. It does a really good job in finding all the creases and bringing out all the details and just giving a really lovely weathered look to the figures. And this is exactly what I want my Orruk army to look like. These guys need to look like they've been through hell and back. I want them to be muddy, weathered, the lot. I'm still a little bit unsure how much of this liquid magic you're meant to brush over your figure, but all in all, I was quite happy with the finish of mine. It did add quite a bit of depth to the figure. This is the final look, and there are a couple of things I would like to change, but I'll get into that in a minute. But I think for the most part, I can be quite proud of how it looks. I'm sure you guys are watching this thinking, what the bloody hell has he done? He's actually ruined it. He may as well have just left it plain plastic. But I actually am a little bit proud. I'm quite happy considering it's my first figure that I've painted in, well, 20 years probably. And Eve's just looks so good considering she's got no experience whatsoever in painting Warhammer figures. I think we can be quite happy with what we've done. So things I'd do differently, I would definitely paint the skin first, or even just give an undercoat of green. I would also take the figure apart and paint the back of the shield, because at the moment I have left the back of my shield black because it would be just too difficult to get the brush in behind. So I kind of feel like I've cheated. Maybe later on down the line, in a few years' time when I've got better at painting, I'll revisit it, or I'll even try and take the figure apart, but I just didn't want anything to snap. When painting as well, I also need to remember that it's okay to do one layer, and even if it's thin, you can go back later when it's dry and just paint over the top of it, and that way I will probably achieve a much smoother outcome than what I did with this figure here. This guy is definitely a bit more streaky and blotchy than I would have liked him to have been. I'm also pretty sure the shoulder plate and the leg plate that he's got are meant to be silver, not brown. But it still looks quite cool because what I've done is I've painted these studs on them silver and they stand out quite nicely against the brown. So I'm probably not going to change that, to be honest. It's a learning curve. I can look back at this figure in a few years' time and be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's probably not as good as I first thought it was, but it's a great start and there's lots for me to learn. But all in all, I had such an amazing experience from start to finish, from shop to painting it in here in the flat. I had the best time. It is so therapeutic being sat there. You know, you can have a podcast on, you can have music on. Me and Eve were just sat in silence, painting, having a little chat as well. It was so nice. It is like a bit of a lifestyle. On top of that, you get such a sense of achievement when a figure is finished. You've got something that you can be proud of. You've accomplished something, which is really good for me and my mental health personally. I can just be sat here at the end and just sort of lovingly look at my figure and think, yeah, I created you, I painted you, and I'm so proud of that. Anyway, I am so excited to build this army and I'm so excited to bring you guys along for the ride. This will be a series that we can upload, you know, alongside all the other fun content we do. And I'll probably update it every month or two just because it will take me a while to, you know, buy a new set, put it together, paint it, and then film the process along the way. But it will be well worth the wait for each video, I think. Sorry if I've done a really bad job in explaining any of this. it's all so new to me and I've got so much to learn. Thank you all so much for watching and I will see you all when I'm back from holiday. Take care and may the force be with you.